We are live. It's 7:05. Tonight I'm going to show you the thumbnail that I use is actually a dyno graph. And my question is, where's the torque? It's like, where's the beef? Except where's the torque? And this is something I'm going to discuss only with the live feed crew so that you guys are, you guys are kind of special. But my conundrum here is this, and I want you guys to let me know what you think. After we put everything back together, I put the super ported Ritchie M90 blower on there, and we still had the Truck Norris camshaft in there. This one had the 1 3/4 headers on it, so we put it on there. This was the very first time that we ran this motor after I did that porting, basically. So the way that we normally do this on the engine dyno, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the graph that I'm talking about, because you can't see the thumbnail unless you've tuned in and saw the thumbnail. But I'll show you the thumbnail. We'll turn the camera around. One day I'll get so that I can stream this and then I can show it up on the live feed, and you'll be able to see it, and I won't have to turn the camera around. But my question is this: when I made the first 2 runs on this motor, when we're just starting out, figuring out what the tune is going to be and what needs to change and stuff, this thing made a lot of torque, over 500 foot-pounds of torque. And so if you guys have looked in the data and any of the results in any of the videos that I've done, like the one that I just put up today, you'll see that this thing never showed 500 foot-pounds of torque. In fact, on the first pull, it made 511 foot-pounds. I thought, ooh, man, we're getting somewhere now. This thing is on its way to go way past 500 horsepower if it continues out with this kind of trajectory. So, because what I do normally is we'll do a very short sweep and go, okay, the numbers that I put in are working in terms of timing and air fuel, and primarily the air fuel, because usually the timing is fairly soft to begin with. But in this case, I still had the power or the timing curve from the time before that we'd run it. So all of that stuff was kind of dialed in. We just added more timing down low, and all of that seemed to work out pretty well. But the thing is, I ran, and here's my story, and I want you guys to let me know what you guys think. And I'll show you the graph here. So this is the thumbnail, and you guys can take a look at it. So what I'm talking about is this up here. So this is the first run. This is the second run. This is basically every other run after that. So this thing made 511 foot-pounds and then dropped down to about 500, and then now is down to 490 or 488 or something. So this first run is fairly short because we went from 31 or 3200 to 5000 or so. And then we started running them at higher RPM just to make sure that everything is safe. But this was the first pull that I did. That was the very first run that we did on this dyno session. So it made over 500 foot-pounds of torque. So my question is, where's the torque? Why did it drop off? Why did the torque keep dropping down and down and down and down? So we're going to discuss that tonight. So you can kind of see where's the torque. Question is, where's the torque? But here's the thing. So we ran the motor, first pull, lots of torque. I was amazed. I'm like, wow, that's a lot more than it made before. I didn't change anything. No changes to the tune, no changes to the pulley, no throttle, nothing. Just made another pull because I wanted to verify it. We made another pull, it's down. So lost 10 or 11 foot-pounds. And then every run after that, it dropped. Well, the next run, it dropped down more. And then it stayed consistent after that. So I'm scratching my head. I'm like, I didn't make any tune changes. The air fuel is the same. The timing is the same. I'll check the temperature, and I chalk that up to, that was my first thought as well. That's an ultra cold blower run, even though it wasn't ultra cold because we had idled the motor for a while before we had run it. So it's recirculating the air. So the blower was not ice cold. It wasn't like we started it up and then did a hit on it and then ran it. And then also, so that people know, this isn't my first time at this, we let the thing cool back off. just to see if it was indeed heat soak, if it, you know, the dreaded heat soak. Is the blower cold? Well, we made the blower cold again, and it still didn't do that. In fact, when we made the blower cold again, it just did the same thing that it had done before. So it wasn't a temperature thing. It wasn't a blower temperature thing. There wasn't a change in environmental temperature or any of the parameters on the dyno between the first run and the second run, because it was a matter of a minute or so between one run and then the other run. It was nothing. There was no change at all. And like I said, I went back later on, and because there are times when we were either readjusting the dyno or reconfiguring it or making a change or whatever, we were adding a header or whatever we were doing, when everything would cool off. And so it wasn't, I don't think, was a blower temperature, unless that initial startup of the blower, everything's better. So my question is, what happened? Where did that go? Why didn't it ever come back, even when we cooled this thing back off? We had runs later on at night where the temperature going through the blower was much colder, because the night air was much colder. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if what I suspect, or what this leads me to believe, is that, did something happen to the motor? Was it running better and then not running better? Did it get hurt? Did something get sucked into the blower and hurt the blower, but only a little bit? Because after that, it was very repeatable. But those first couple of runs, you know, those are like hero runs, and those usually happen at the end after you make all the runs. You let it cool down. You know, you let the blower sit there, turn the fan on. You get lots of air flow through there, cools everything off, and you know, you could do a hero run like that if you wanted to. If you're just looking for a number, that's when you're at like 499.7 horsepower, and it just doesn't want to go over 500. You're like, oh no, you're going to go over 500, because I'm going to let you sit here and cool off, or I'm going to get the water. I'm going to get the oil really hot and then let it cool off and let water flow through it, because we've got an electric water pump, and I'm going to get that extra 1 or 2 horsepower. We're going to make that happen. But it didn't do that. And we're running E85 on this thing. We're at full throttle all the time, because occasionally I will go in there and re-verify it. But in this case, you can see the throttle body going to full throttle, and you can feel it on the handle on the stick. So it's not that. No timing change, because I don't have any sort of closed loop enabled. Air feel exactly the same both runs. No change, because we didn't make any changes to that. And there's no closed loop, there's no modifiers, there's no nothing. We have data logs for both of them. The timing is exactly the same. Boost is exactly the same. So what is it? What is the difference? I don't know. I would like to have somebody tell me what the answer is, because I'd like to get that power back. I want this thing to make over 500 foot-pounds. That would be better. And we're not going to do that now that we have the bigger camshaft in there. It's definitely softer now with the bigger camshaft in there. But that was one of the things that happened while we're doing this testing. And these are the kind of things that, when you're dyno testing, that sometimes I just leave like scratching my head going, I don't know what happened. I've looked at all the things that I thought that this could be. You know, is it water temperature? Is it air temperature? What is it? We can recreate that situation, and then that doesn't bring it back. So it makes me wonder, did we hurt it? Is one cylinder down? I didn't do a leak down test on it, or a compression test on it. Could be that, I guess. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, so the poll for tonight was the added power offered by the first two hits caused by the lack of just the dreaded heat soak. Was this a heat soak situation? Well, let me know what you guys think. That's not it. I cooled it back off. But, you know. Everybody's in the house. James W's back. That's Burns getaway. All the guys here. Todd, what's going on, man? Magazine did small buck Chevy engine build called TorqueBot. What is that? Heat soak, heat soak. Guys are saying heat soak. Todd, you're healthy again, man? That's awesome. Let air temps went up, no intercooler. Yeah, but we cooled it back off. So why didn't it go back? Why didn't it go back to where it was after we cooled it off? Doc just gave you a good clean bill of health. That's fantastic, Todd. Losing compression? I don't know. I don't know if that's, you know, did it can't hurt itself on the low timing that we had down there anyway, because we have the nice thing about this blower is that the boost curve is like at least reasonably flat. It's slightly rising or slightly declining now, depending on which camshaft and stuff we have in there. But it's always around, you know, between 150 and 160 kPa. So it's right in that range. So what we have is a timing curve based on RPM, essentially, because the boost is staying pretty constant. So we just have less timing down low and then more as we go up in RPM. Out of the top, it has 21, I think. Probably starting out around 16 or 17 down low. So it's on that low of boost with everything cold and E85, you know, it's plenty safe. No change in oil pressure. I mean, other than the change that you would see between one run and another, as you make more runs, the oil pressure drops by a couple of pounds, or depending on how much heat you're putting into it. Could the belt will stretch a little and cause a small amount of slip? We're not seeing that on the data log, though. We would see that if there was less boost, but the boost curve is the same because we're data logging the boost curve. When you're expecting the M90 back from Jokers, after I send it to them. Are the bearings in the blower locking up due to heat? I mean, it was one short pull of 2000 RPM, so I can spin the blower by hand still to this day. The belt's plenty warm. We had run that belt in the last time we ran it because we run this 2.6 pulley in this configuration a whole bunch on the last go around for the dyno run. So the belt had done slipped already. In fact, I improved things this go around by putting that tensioner in place, not tensioner, an idler in place, just so that we had more belt wrap. So there'll be less chance of belt slip in this situation. And the belt has already done its initial stretch and is kind of, found its happy spot. You're guessing gasket failure. You're thinking that the intake gasket is bad, but we'd see any sort of leak we would see as a change in boost pressure. I have a question. Have you ever seen or heard of a piston wrist pin wear into the piston on any engine? So is the pin galling? What? I thought I had something on my tooth. Is the pin galling the piston? Seals on the M90 belt bearing is a possibility. Was there a change in the RPM of where are we at here? Where peak torque was developed? We weren't at peak power, or we probably were near peak torque. The curves are the same, so it's not a peak power, peak torque thing. We only ran for 2,000 RPM. We just did the load in and let it run a little bit. So we're not doing that yet. Just in time, you finished up at the farm, no longer in debt. Nice. Maybe it broke in a lobe or spring adjustment is needed. I don't know. The heads didn't do anything when we put the heads on and they had new springs on them. Probably distorted the timing chain with all the drag from, from the blower. Vacuum leaks. 1.6 Hyundai non-turbo. Try higher octane fuel for a few pulls. We got 9 pounds. We got 21 degrees in it. The charge temperature is only 175 degrees coming out of the blower, and that's only at the top of the RPM range. And we have E85, so it's not an octane thing. Was there vacuum out of the throttle body during the pull? I'm sure that there is. I didn't measure it, but we know that there would be, because otherwise there wouldn't have been a gain in put the throttle body on there and did the porting. Off topic, how does a stock flywheel hold up to power on an LS 800 horsepower? Does anybody know? I've never run one. Are you talking about shock loading it at the drag strip and stuff? I would think for that horsepower, if you're drag racing it, that you want an SFI, you want a good flywheel. Justin, I did show the graph earlier, and it's actually the thumbnail for this video. Just guessing. That's the other thing I need to show you later on. I'll show you maybe on the next video or something. I'll see if I have a photo of it. We had one of the plugs during this testing. I don't think it was this day. I think it was the next day. One of the plugs was broke. It broke the porcelain. Probably, I'm sure, because I must have dropped it. It's the only thing I could think. But it still ran. In fact, it ran perfect. When I was taking the plugs out, I had just made a pull, and I'm like, this should be way down on power. This has got to be down on a hole. There's no way this plug is working. I put new plugs in it, and it made exactly the same power. So that's another thing that happened. I'm curious why superchargers always appear to be so drastically more expensive than turbos. I thought it would be rad to put a roots blower on a big block Mopar for my Dakota, but man, it's big money. Yeah, any of the big blowers, any of the big roots blowers, like at 671 or 871 or something like that, those are going to be quite a bit of money. Yes, very bad. Loose, wore out the skirts and sides of the pistons. The pin did that? How would the pin wear out the skirts and the sides of the piston? Did it wear out the hole that the pin goes through? Did it oblong the hole? Clogged injector. No, we didn't see any air fuel thing. And we had 802s, so we could kind of see what's going on there. Cylinder looks like it can be ball honed. So did the drag van, did the pin cause a problem, or did the thing have the wrong air fuel and then the piston skirts got all scuffed, because that's usually what happens if it's lean. Street build square body, 5.3 LS with a 75, 76 turbo, planning to make 800 wheel horsepower with a 4L80. Wonder if I can run a stock flywheel. I don't know. I mean, you can. It will work. We run them on the engine dyno like that, but we don't shock load them and launch them and stuff. So I would be leery of doing that. Piston was side loading. Todd, I'm glad to hear 2024 is looking up. Are you going to want to run that motor? 54% are saying no on the heat soak thing. I can go down to live chat. Where's the torque? Where's the beef? Yep, air feels good. See, I wanted that. It was like 512 foot-pounds. I kind of wanted that. And then 500 or 501. What are some of your personal project cars? I have a 71 240Z. I have an original owner 5-liter Mustang, and 85 Dodge Omni converted GLHS. Broken Ringland. Richard, did you put a video up earlier today? I did. I did a live feed, and I also put a video up, and the video is 1 3/4 versus 1 7/8 headers, 706 versus 799 heads, and Truck Norris versus Hot Rod Cam, all on the 4.8. Dan, I didn't figure out why it lost torque. I still don't know. I still don't have an answer to that. I don't know. Sometimes, you know, when you have a really, really cold blower, sometimes it is happy, but we cooled it back off. And so that should come back. And it just never came back to make that. And I'm disappointed, wildly disappointed. Though it wouldn't surprise me if the blower is worn out. But I don't know why it would wear out and then all of a sudden just decide to be consistent for another 40 or 50 pulls. Like if it wore out and started depositing things down into the motor, I'd go, yeah, okay, I can see that. Because when you see when when these blowers start taking the coating off, things get ugly, and there's no intercooler in there, so there's no screen basically to catch all that stuff. So it's all going to go in the motor. And I had the heads off, so you know, if it had a bunch of, I didn't see any damage on any of the pistons or anything. Hot mess, you didn't get a notification? Yeah, go check it out. Richard, are the M90 rotors Teflon coated? I think that the Gen 5 does have some kind of coating on it, but I don't know if it's Teflon or not. Tired spark plug wires, possibly. We don't have spark plug wires. I don't normally see them come and go. If it was a top filler, we'd re-strip the blower. I know, but I would like to strip this blower. That would be cool. That'd be a little bit of machine work, though. I think the blower bearings are worn. Maybe when you spin it by hand, it's already cooled down enough to loosen up. Well, yeah, that's a nice theory. I don't know why that it would get to a point where it's just is the same all the way. Yeah, Dan, nothing changed. I didn't change the fuel flow. None of that stuff changed. Richard, will you ever stream Fortnite? You mean where I'm playing that game? I don't play that game. My sons do, I think. I think the blower bearings are worn. I just don't understand why it would drop and then get consistent after it dropped. Can you replace the bearings in the blower? I don't have any bearings. It's not like I have rebuild kits there. Could it be the seals went out or broke in more? Yeah, Dan, the boost, that's the thing. The boost is still there. It's we're logging each one of them and the curve is still the same. Timing is still the same. It's magic. It's like it's magic. Heat soak can definitely happen in a blower. That's why icing the blower and stuff, I guess, can maybe make the blower. Yeah, the boost is still there, Dan. The icing the blower might work. The thing that I'd be worried about is changing the rotor clearances. I'd like to try that though. We are spinning this blower a lot. We're spinning it pretty high, so maybe bearings are it. I don't know. Josh, it was the very first pull of this go around. I mean, this blower has been run a lot on this motor a whole bunch of times. Reverse magic. My ex could do that with your paychecks. Compression test. I could do a compression test or a leak down on it and see. I've had it happen to my old F250. Took my several $100s worth of parts just to figure out my spark plug wires were not passing a strong enough spark to have full power, just down on power. Yeah, I've never seen plug wires do that. I've seen them misfire. We've seen them arc, and you know, but we normally see that as a not as a down, you know, everywhere power thing, but as a drop in power somewhere during the misfire situation. But we can try that. I mean, I think these are factory wires. Tool up the valves. The valves are all stock, but there was nothing wrong with the valves. We took the heads off, and when I replaced the heads, overdid the gap. Yeah, we haven't done gap on that yet. So the gap is still under gapped, if anything. Thought maybe you blew out some of the carbon on the first pull and drop compression. I should run. I was concerned about that one cylinder, but when I took it apart, it was actually not looking too bad in the cylinder anyway. Was California experiencing a brownout? Did we lose power? Yeah. Can you look at the cylinders of the borescope? I can look at the cylinders because we took the heads off. Yeah, Admiral, you answered yes, even though you couldn't see what the question was. That's right, you should. Ohio's in the house. Oh, what's round on both ends and says hi in the middle? Exactly. The heads are not off now. I put the 799 heads on, but I looked at one of the things I was concerned with was head gaskets. So we looked at the head gaskets. All that was fine. Cleaned off the deck surfaces of both of them, blew everything out. There's no scuffs or anything in any of the walls. All of that stuff looks like a used junkyard 4.8. Yeah, John, I would like it to be something like that. I'd like it to be something random. I would like for it to come back. So, you know, and you know, it's always good to figure out what it is. I assume it was a should we do more testing question. Yeah, it was. I made when I made the first two pulls on the blower motor. on the M90, it made lots and lots of torque, like over 500 foot-pounds, 511 foot-pounds. And then the torque went away, and then it wouldn't make it again, no matter what I did. The blower bearings are hot. It does a little, but it also causes the rotors to expand and increase flow, and you get less bleed off from between them, and casing makes it more consistent. It blew the welds on the intake. Exactly. I should have put it on a spoon engine, right? The belt's not slipping because the boost is the same. The blowers need to be lubricated. The bearings of where the rotors are spinning do, but the rotors themselves do not need to be. Does it have back pressure? I don't think it has back pressure. Yep, danger to the manifold. Almost had you. Man, you didn't have your car. Yeah. Richard, are you running a 2.6? Yeah, the 2.6 blower pulley and then the stock LS truck damper, 7.5 inch. It's pretty big. On another project of mine, I'm going to turbo my 5.9 Magnum. How bad would the spooling be with twin GT45s? I can ask because I already have these turbos, so I figured I'd use one. I think on a 5.9 Magnum, you should put one GT45 on it and then see how that goes. Two GT45s it's going to be a really soft spool, and that's 1,500 plus horsepower with the turbos. I don't imagine you're going to do that on your Magnum, right? Was the long tube header wrapped on this blower motor? Do you have a fuel flow meter on the dyno? No, they don't. No, they do. They do, but they have it on the lines that they have going to the carburetor. And the way that they have it plumbed to run fuel injection, the fuel flow is not accurate. How's the oil look? No cam bearing problems. The cam bearings look worn because we replaced the cam later on, so they're not great. But they're like every junkyard motor that I've ever taken apart. Richard, you should do a 10-minute poll at the end of the stream asking if I should buy a wagon or a truck for my next car. You want me to ask them if you should buy that? Yeah, Nick, one GT45 is a 700 to 750 horsepower turbo. So on a Magnum, that's probably going to kind of be where you'd want to be, I would guess. You need a different fuel flow meter if it has a return line. Yeah, they're not taking that into account. The return lines going back up into the surge tank. What they do is they have the two carbureted lines that they use to hook up on the carburetor. They have those feeding two bowl vents, two bowls, like carb bowls up at the top, so that they have needles and seats on them. And then they feed a surge tank, and then that feeds the fuel injection pump. And then the return line for the regulator goes up to the top of that also. Bypass malfunction, diaphragm, vacuum source, all that would show as a drop in boost, and we didn't see a drop in boost. Richard, you realize you're probably exceeding the mechanical limits of the blower on the back end. Think about how much faster the blower spins. I think it's like 4 to 1. So at 5,000 RPM, it's spinning 20,000 RPM. Whoa, what did your sister just say, bro? I heard that. Are you talking about, we've calculated the blower speed. We know that we're over speeding the blower, but guys have run these at 20,000 and we're not there yet. Oh, you Admiral, you want the stream's opinion? You just warm the dyno up on that run. I'm looking at 80s, 90s, and 2000 cars. A Yaris, trucks. I know I want to buy a little car to run the AMR 500 on, so I want a Metro probably. Did the data log show excess fuel when the power went down? No. Richard, so at that RPM, how much air is it really flowing at 20,000 RPM? I don't know. I would want to run an air hat on this thing. An air hat, I think, would help tell me more things. Like it might cure this issue that I'm talking about. Was looking at a 4.3 this afternoon. I think the Super Coupe blower mounted off to the side on a plate bolted to the AC pedestal of Vortec access drive with a tube going throttle body or carb. That'll work. You can offset mount those kinds of blowers. Dan, I think I told you before we were helping a customer with testing slip fit headers. He used WD-40 on the tubes after the first pull, and it lost 50 horsepower on the next pull until it all burned off. So why was it losing power with the WD-40? Was it burning in the tube or something? Was it restricting exhaust? 20,000 on newer rebuilt blowers, maybe. Sounds like bearings to me. You're still going down that bearing route. Richard, are you running an air-to-air or an air-to-water? I'm not running either one of those on this M90 supercharger because we're only running like 9 pounds because we have a real efficient motor. I'm going to run an air-to-water on it though. There's a 5.7 Magnum available in good condition, a 97 big block crew cab, 460 F350 that's decent, and an 08 V10 F250. Well, you have to get the V10. AM 500-42. Based on your experience, would an M90 at 1.8 revs per engine revs work well for a 1.9 VW diesel rather than the original VNT? I think the turbo is a better choice for the diesel, but you could do both. And can't you add a bunch of power with the diesel with fuel? Pressure test for boost leaks. I have no idea why we just told him to not use the stuff again. That's true. Theorize that the fumes were getting sucked into the carbon, doing something bad in race engine. Richard, no intercooler, no meth. Teflon coating is iffy at best, and it's overspun. Then it's most definitely heat soak. Well, I would like for it to be most definitely something, but it's not heat soak because we cooled the blower back off and the power didn't come back. So I don't know if that absolutely tells me that it's not a temperature thing, but it tells me that's not a temperature thing. V10 is an auto and the 460 has a manual. Yeah, I would lean toward the manual, but I wish the V10 was a manual. Mostly torn between the trucks with the Magnum, at least haul my tools and stuff. Magnums are good. Boosted Magnums are better. Speaking of that, I need to boost the Magnum that I have. It's not the inlet air temps anyways. Like I said, we've seen a high of 175 and a low of 155 later on in the night when it cooled off. Will a Kenny Bell 4.2 or 4.7 make 1,300 wheel horsepower on a 13 GT500? Yes, it will, but the blower will easily support that much power. but it might not do it just on an otherwise stock GT500. You have to do a bunch of stuff to the motor to make it do that. So you can tell the blower itself is healthy because the PSI is the same. Maybe before and after compression tests could have given some answers. Yeah, the motor looks like it's going away to me. We have bearing material in the oil. So the motor, I think, is not doing well, and it has low oil pressure. But it's so consistent. Run after run, it does the same thing. As long as you don't make any changes to it now, it does the same thing. Probably continuing to deposit bearing material. Rerun it from a cold start altogether. We did. We let the motor sit for a long time while I ate with a fan on it, and it didn't come back. Did the manifold air temperature increase dramatically? No. It's dying a slow death. The 4.8 definitely is. Luckily for the 4.8, I'm hoping that the crank's not bad because it's the motor that I want to do the put the 6-liter stuff in, put the 4-inch bore in it. 4.7 it is. Building the motor, raising compression to 10.5. So run it on methanol, put big cams in it, port the manifold, port the heads, do all that. Constantly getting worse, but constant nonetheless. That's right. Bearing material extra clearance race for it. Did they ever make an aluminum block 4.8? Well, I don't think that they did. Does anybody know? They made a 5.3 in aluminum block, so it's the same block. But I don't know that did they ever put that crank in the factory aluminum block? I have a lot of gold. The 85 by me as well. Good. That'll work. I think when they did a bunch of testing on the 3.6 and the 4.2, and I think Mahovitz made 1500 with one or both of those. But he had a really good motor to do it, and it had a very high compression 5.4, but it had big cams and ported heads and all that stuff. I don't know why, but I want to build aluminum 4.8. What if you got an aluminum 5.3 and told people it was an aluminum 4.8, and then it was but it had more torque and made more power? I'm just thinking use methanol because it will help you make the power like E85 does to gasoline. So now what I want to do is I kind of want to take this blower apart. I'm sending a different one to the guys at Jokers. I want to take this one apart and look inside it. And then if I take it apart, I just need to get one of the kits that have the oil and all that stuff and the sealant so I can put it back together. But I want to do that, and then I'll port the discharge and port the entry some more. And this way I can look at the bearings and see if they're, is there temperature in them? Did they just fall right out? Are they bad? Put 20 PSI on a G54B. It's very underwhelming. So time to port the head and add compression, get a real turbo. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. E70 would be fine. Yep. Those big blowers can make a lot of steam. Make sure that you have a giant, if you're running one of those big blowers, make sure that you have a giant size inlet going to it. Like 205 millimeter throttle bodies, or even something bigger than that big oval. I think that Mahovitz, that's what they did, is they ran 205 millimeter throttle bodies on it. You want to have all the inlet with no restriction. It's going to be pretty snappy. With 205s on a 4.7 liter blower, it's going to be a little hard to get out into traffic. I don't imagine you're driving that around, but No factory aluminum 4/8 ever. Yeah, I didn't think so. I don't remember hearing about any of them. But again, you could do that. I just don't know why you would. It's like de-stroking a 6-liter. Half the 85 is E50 to E90 from all the data my flex fuels tell me. Yeah, it varies. Does Whipple produce blowers for industrial and agricultural purposes? I think that they do. I think that they do the same thing that Vortec does. I think that they use them for air movement and compressors in big warehouses. Enderley barn door should be big enough. Yeah, there you go. Replacing the cam on a 454 Vortec. I need to stop watching your videos because now I want to play with runner length. That intake manifold, the factory intake manifold on that Gen 6 motor is actually not too bad. It makes a lot more low speed power than I thought it would. It makes a little bit less top end than the dual plane does, but I think that there's some modifications that can be done to that manifold and make it even better. I'm in the middle of replacing my Zenko breaker panel, so I'm running off a generator for power I need to run and get nice fuel. Nice to see everyone. Todd, let me know what you're going to do with your LS2, man. Been interested in doing an L8T crank and an LS block. It has more stroke, center counterweights, and factory forge. Are you going to run like 1,000,000 pounds of boost on it so that you could use that crankshaft? Oh, that's right, 1,000,000. So go ahead. We'll go ahead and put Admiral's poll up here. Was the added power offered by the first 2 hits caused by lack of just the dreaded heat soak? 55% are saying yes. So what poll did we want to have, Admiral? Should Admiral get a truck? Is that what we're doing? So is it the V10 truck instead of the? Well, no, I'm gonna make it easy. So we might get 100% here, Admiral, because I can't give 2 options there. So should Admiral get the V10 Ford truck? All cams are not turbo cams. I have a quote from the comment section of David Weisberg's video titled "Over 90% of turbo cams do not do the job," and this comment was posted by username Stave Tech. Okay, you're entitled to think whatever you want, but nobody yet has been able to show me a camshaft that I cannot run a turbo on. So, and the turbo just does whatever the cam does NA. When you add a turbo to that, it just multiplies what's there. That's what they all do. I have yet to see a camshaft that doesn't do that. Are valve springs just old and heat soaked, not sealing great? Is it possible there's a blow through somewhere in the intake? I don't know, but where else could you lose just a little bit that isn't changing? I don't know. I would have thought, like if it was the valve thing, I totally could have seen that be an issue with the 706 heads. But when we replaced them with the 799 heads, which we know ran great on the L33, it didn't cure any of that. Can I get a turbo for 1,000,000 pounds? You might have to get 2. Each one of them would be 500,000, but when you have 2 of them, or even more if you compound them. 13 B swap, V10 auto or big block manual. Yeah, I can't do that as a poll. It's a tight race. We're at, who would say no to that? I keep seeing blowers on JD combines that remind me of Whipple blowers. Yeah. They're probably, are they Roots blowers though? This is the first time I've seen someone talk or write about turbo cams and me agree with them, as there's so much complete BS out there. It's unreal. Usually the info is one of 2 things. Either you don't want any overlap. Yeah, we know that that's not true. They've only ever had experience on cars with small turbos or all cams or turbo cams. All you've ever dealt with is massive turbos running relatively low. So neither one of your statements are accurate. I've run all types of turbos on all types of cars, and overlap. That statement's actually right. You don't want any overlap. The not wanting overlap is incorrect. Turbos work just fine with cams that have overlap in them, but all cams are turbo cams. Will cams do the same ProCharge? Yes. If you have an NA cam and it works well, you can add a ProCharger to that, and it will work just fine. Okay, but that is a poor metric for deciding what a good turbo cam is. If the damn atmospheric pressure of the earth increased, the NA cam would just go up, like you say. You haven't convinced me of anything. If your point is that you can make a camshaft that will, you could make a custom cam that will make more power NA, but won't make more power turbocharge, or will make more power turbocharge and not make more power NA, nobody's convinced me of that. Not you, not David, not anybody that grinds camshafts, not anybody that designs camshafts, not anybody that knows more about camshafts than I'll ever know. Nobody has shown me that, because it doesn't happen. I think I'm going to swap a 302 into my Explorer and get rid of the tired 4-liter before the timing chain goes. I have to pull it anyways. 302 is a good idea. Let's see. I've had a bad experience with the V10. I know, but it's a V10 though. Mufflers. I lost a bolt-in exhaust once, caused a 50 horse loss and weird backfire. Could possibly be exhaust leak. No, because when we did this first test, there were no mufflers on it. There were only the 1 3/4 headers that have a short collector extension welded to it. So later on, after I did the header test, we put the headers on that we had run before many times with the 1 7/8 headers with longer collector extensions and mufflers, and it made more power. So if anything, it was a better situation. I can swap a 6-speed behind the V10 too, from an 08 to 10 F250. So I don't know, it's a hard choice. Drunken Hamster, you after you've done 30 or 40 years of direct back-to-back dyno testing on hundreds and hundreds of camshafts, both NA and turbocharged, that's when you and I can come have a conversation. But I have all of this data that tells me that what I'm telling you is 100% accurate, and nobody else has come up with anything that tells me that it's not. Nobody has shown me any dyno results where what I'm saying doesn't happen. For a long time, thousands of dyno tests, and not just, hey, I ran a motor and it did this. It's I ran a motor, and that's what I call a baseline. Then I did 20 other tests on it where I ran it NA. Then I ran it with a turbo. Then I ran it with a blower. Then I ran it with a different kind of blower. Then I ran it with nitrous. And it always does this. Literally never have any help whatsoever. I know how you feel. I've read conflicting information. Is the Vortec black box ECM tunable for boost? Really like to boost our 98.74. I don't know. Will it recognize positive pressure? I don't know if the factory ECU will do that, or if it's just going by a mass air reading. If it's going by a mass air reading and the mass air is, showing you the extra airflow and it has enough scale, then you might be able to get away with that. Richard, have you done an NA versus turbo cam test where the 50 numbers are almost identical, but the valve events were different? I don't know if I've done that or designed a test to do specifically what you're saying. It may be that I've done that because I had 2 cams that did that. But I don't know what you mean by an NA cam and a turbo cam. Because if you run those 2 cams and one of those cams, you don't even have to tell me which one. If one of those cams makes more power NA, it's going to make more power under boost. At higher altitudes, the engine changes because of lower exhaust pressure. That's why we have barrel correction. So do I need to swap out my turbo cam to go across Bale Pass? Yes and no. And what about Death Valley? What would happen to power if you ran an engine with no exhaust manifolds with open exhaust ports? You would burn all the exhaust valves. At least that's what the internet tells you. When you look at zoomy headers or the exhausts on some like airplane applications, I don't think that actually happens. But that's what the old wives' tale is. I want to run a motor, one of these LS motors with zoomies on it. No VCT, the plugs don't tend to break or strip. Maybe I should get the OBS, then swap the V10 in later. Do you want to do a swap, Admiral? We'll find out if these combine blowers or roots or twin screws sometime, hopefully soon. JD part number is AXE460080. If anyone knows what the units are, does anybody have any idea that this can help Terry out? What are they used on these combines? Are they using roots blowers? Richard, do I save and buy AFR smog heads or port some old Vortec ones from the junkyard? Both of those can work. Obviously, an AFR head is going to be better than anything that you get from the wrecking yard. What if there was a ProCharger type thing, but exhaust on the turbine, which turned the crank? That's the spinny thing, right? Burns, did that show or did it block me? What were you trying to show? No, the John Cools thing showed, if that's what you're trying to show. Valve train issue, soft lifter, maybe. These are stock lifters. I just don't know why that, like, we've had lifters go away before, usually one. Either, and these are all, we've had them all happen because when you've tested for a really long time, and especially when you've tested junky stuff like I have from the wrecking yard, you have issues on occasions. You know, sometimes the lifter has spun and rotated and wiped the cam out. Sometimes the plunger has stuck down in the bore, and sometimes you could tap it, it comes back up, and it works perfect after that. Sometimes it stays down there, and then that's it. That lifter never comes back. I don't know if I've ever had one like not depress anymore. Like it I don't think I've ever seen it get rusted like at the top, so that the thing doesn't act as a, you know, as a hydraulic lifter anymore. That now it's a solid. I don't remember that happening. Thinking a minor exhaust leak could cause a weird minor torque drop. A minor exhaust leak in the headers? I'm new to the channel, looking to refresh a 5.3 L33 for a classic truck. What mods, intake cam, throttle body, and cam would give me the best overall driving performance? Tim, you need to look up at the channel and just look at the million like 5.3 things. And especially, I have lots and lots of L33 stuff. The first thing you should do on any LS is at cam and springs. And so depending on how drivable, like what the combination of drivability and maximum power you want, where you want that to be, do you want to use a stock converter, all of those things. A camshaft is usually the first thing, and that's the thing that's going to give you the most power. After that, your choices are a little bit harder because the cylinder heads are pretty good on there, and the intake manifold's pretty good on there. To step up to a really good intake manifold is an expensive thing. You put a fast on there like an LSXR, that's going to be more than $1,000. Quite honestly, you're almost getting into, if you put heads and cam in it, you're looking at like turbo numbers for expense, and the turbo could add way more than the heads and cam do. Forget to compliment the blower on its new haircut? Probably so. Admiral, my 454 had all the lifters, plungers sunk when I got it. Thought it had solid lifters. Yeah, I've had that happen on big blocks. I remember Brule fixing one like that. They had a plunger stuck down on the lifter, but he was able to. He took it out. He knew exactly what it was. He's like, "Oh yeah, look at all that lash. There's a problem. Either the cam's bad, which the cam wasn't bad, so that was good." He said, "Oh look at that lifter. That shouldn't be down that far." And then they, I think they disassembled it and took it apart and examined it and pushed it in there, and it worked. If the lifter stuck up, it shows a misfire or loss and boost, correct? I have had put temporarily put push rods that were too long, and so they held valves open, and the motor doesn't want to run if you do that, or at least that side didn't want to run, and then we had to cure that. These blowers were used in exhaust after treatment systems on the JD combines. I was surprised to see them in this application. Have you ever compared an engine that was a factory EFI then tested it carbureted? Yes, all of the 7.4 liter 454 Gen 6 motors are factory EFI, and then normally I don't run them EFI. I have, but we ran them. I normally get them and put carbureted intake manifolds on them and a distributor, and we run them that way. But I have taken the factory fuel injection and ran it that way, although we didn't run it with the factory EFI setup. We ran it with a Holley, but using the factory throttle body and intake manifold and fuel rails and injectors and that stuff, and ran it that way to see how much power it made, and then took that off and then put the carbureted intake manifold on there. And what you're testing there is not so much carburation versus fuel injection. What you're testing there is, hey, these are two completely different intake designs. And oh yeah, by the way, one of them is also getting fuel going into the carburetor or going into the manifold and getting extra charge cooling. So normally Dan's right. If you get a carbureted engine, it makes really good power. Don't talk down on my EFI with facts. Ask the Pro Stock guys, ask the Cup guys when they had to switch over to fuel injection. Ask them how steep a learning curve it was to get it to make more power than their carburetors did. It took a while. Thank you. My last build was a few years ago with a 350 and an RPM complete top end that made 400 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds. I'm looking forward to the 5.3. Yeah, if you on a 5.3 you can throw a cam at it and it will be way more than 400 horsepower. I think I remember seeing something blowing up on the left side of the motor, maybe a bolt backing out of the block. I don't know. Still think it might have been an exhaust leak. I think I remember seeing something blowing up the left side of the motor. Are you still talking about the blower motor? Or this 4.8? Are there any reliable electric oil scavenge pumps for a low-mounted turbo? The guys from Helion sent their turbo kit that I ran on a Coyote. They sent it with some sort of electric pump. I don't know where they sourced it from, but they had one that apparently they trust enough to run on their kits in vehicles for extended periods of time. Is it the charge cooling that makes more power, or is it a better airflow, or both? It's not just airflow. So it's not a total flow thing, like one flows 400 CFM and the other flows 500 CFM. Intake design is way more complicated than that, but charge cooling is part of the game. And then so is runner length and design and yada, yada, yada. If it was just airflow, if it was just, hey, this flows 300 CFM and this flows 280 CFM, that would make life easy for us, but it's not that. We could almost do back-to-back tests like that in Cub. We lost power on the EFI setup. Yeah, when they first started and converted over to fuel injection, and the same thing with the Pro Stock guys, is they struggled to get back to where they were. Because you see the same gains by moving the injectors up higher on the intake manifold. Sometimes you can. Usually injector position does add power. Yeah, you can get some back, but something under plus years old still working pretty good. It is pretty amazing. Charge cooling is better when the fuel is added up higher. Yep. So KD, did you think that changing your name and signing on to a different name was going to change what you're talking about? So now you want to know about blower cams? Dude, why are you coming on here and stirring things up? So how's our poll doing? Should Admiral get the V10 Ford truck? 60% are saying yes, Admiral. I think you should. Oh, it's late. What are you guys doing? Why are you guys keeping? Why would you change your name and then try to ask a question? I don't understand that. I think I do understand it. Is part of the problem. So when you go post on David's thing, please tell him I said hi. David and I are friends, so he's good people. And on that note, it is time to go. But I will see you guys all in the morning.